Um, are we still gonna give them a little more time?
Yeah, well, I got to wait for the staff folks. Gary Stockhoff, Jesse Ott, and James Wright. There's Gary. Hi, Gary. We're gonna wait for James, who's our planner that was the author of the staff report on this project, and Jesse Ott, who's our parks person. And once they come on, we'll kick it off.
Well, I just know that there's several that intended to be here, and
Well,
then I don't see them. I don't know if I see the full list of everybody. I'm,
well, it's still a minute till 4, so
oh, okay.
Hopping on.
there's Jesse. Hi, Jesse.
Hello? Hello, everybody.
I'll get Scotty's on. Your hair is beautiful, Scotty.
Folks, we're waiting just a couple more minutes. We're waiting for planner James Wright to join the meeting, who's going to be like a key contributor to this discussion from the staff side.
Yep, I'm in. Howdy, everybody.
Hi, James.
Recognize a
Hello.
few faces. Gary, Jesse. Everyone else has names, so that makes it easier.
Okay, folks. Well, Janet, do you want to wait a couple more minutes to see if some other Alsea folks jump on, or should we get started?
Oh, well, I guess we can get started. I know there's at least two or three that I fully intended. I hope that it's working for them, you know. I
Sure.
don't know.
Well, we did the best that we could on short notice, so we'll do the best we can. We'll let everybody know that this meeting is being recorded and will be available to anybody that wants to listen to it after the facts. But so Janet, why don't you go ahead and kick off the meeting and then bounce it to me and we'll get it started.
Okay. Just call this special meeting of the CAC in Benton County regarding the McGee, McKee, how do you say it? McGee?
McBee.
McBee campground. Okay. Uh, Calling it to order. Go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm John Swanson, planner in the Community Development Department, and I give staff support to the Alsea CAC for this special meeting. Uh, we're having a special meeting today to deliver information on the development plans for the McBee Campground. On board from the Benton County staff, and who's going to start it off is Jesse Ott. He is the Natural Areas Parks and Events Director. Jesse, thanks for being here. After that, we're going to hear from James Wright, who's an associate planner here in the Community Development Department, and he is the staff person that managed the conditional use permit for the improvement plans for the McBee Campground. And lastly, we have Gary Stockhoff, who is the Public Works Director and also the interim Community Development Director, and he can follow up with any public works related questions that aren't covered by James from the staff report. It's a special meeting. We're having it at 4 o'clock. It's an unusual time of day for this meeting, so I appreciate everyone's accommodation. I'm going to just sort of facilitate this, but I do want to say we want to try and have a hard stop at 5 o'clock because we've got staff members that need to attend a planning commission meeting that begins at 6, and there is startup and prep time for that. So, Jesse, let's start with you on sort of the history and background of the McBee campground that brought us to the point where improvement plans were made and a conditional use application was applied for. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody. Again, I'm Jesse Ott. I'm the Director of Natural Areas, Parks and Events. So I can give a kind of a history of McBee. Um, I was aware that it existed. It was active camping. But it's a little campground. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but people have been camping there for a long time. It's been at least 30 years from the information we can find. And Beautiful site. You can actually, there's a connector trail from Alsea Falls Campground. You can walk straight over to McBee, which is pretty common that people do. So it's very close to Alsea Falls when you think about the site. Um, and I got a call from the Hull Oaks Timber Mill asking if the county would be interested in purchasing the site. Um, we didn't have any money, so said thank you, but we can't. And what had happened for Hull Oaks was they've managed the campground forever. During COVID, it made it onto a list of best free campgrounds in America, a national list. And that was kind of the death blow a little bit for them because, they always kind of saw that that was a bit of a liability and outside of their business, but, they wanted to do something for the community, mill workers, and give folks a place to camp and hang out with their families. So, as we worked through it and kind of looked at different options, we worked with a local nonprofit called the Alliance for Recreation and Natural Areas, housed here in Corvallis. And Hull Oaks ended up doing a donation to the Alliance for Recreation and Natural Areas. They call it a FRANA. And that Frana held the deed for long enough for us to look into some other options, and we found that we could apply for a local government grant through Oregon State Parks. So that's where all of the funding for this came from. They have a really great program with that local government grant where very unique. If a property for recreation becomes available if you can align it with the state recreation priorities. It's a thing called the SCORP. That's what Oregon State Parks kind of works off of and wants everything kind of in alignment with that SCORP if they're to deliver funding. And so the campground, we were able to use the value of the land donation as our match for a grant. And so we're looking at the site, and this is there's gravel roads, there's two bridges, and then just a lot of kind of disparate areas. And so this campground could be anywhere between just 7 families being out there to several hundred people being out there for various events. Um, and so we started looking at it, seeing, okay, well, if we can get that grant, we could end up saving this campground with no county money into it. It all came from Oregon State Parks. And so that's what we ended up doing. Applied for that grant, and so that will help us make it a little more formal. So right now, it's kind of where you can go out there. There were 7 official spaces, but it kind of would go from small camping to huge, huge events where there would be several hundred people out there for something. Um, and so we got that grant and then started in on a process to kind of find out how we would rehabilitate it. And we weren't going to try to reinvent the wheel. We were going to make the spaces a little more formal. Right now, you could park right on the river's edge, right in vegetation, right on top of tree roots, that kind of stuff. So it'll be a little more delineated. It'll look like kind of your typical Oregon State Park or Alsea Falls campground minus the asphalt. This will all be gravel roads, except for very specific kind of ADA pathways for access. It's a couple vault toilets. Um, and so our plan is to update those. Right now, they're more kind of like outhouse shacks. So we'll make that kind of a standard campground vault toilet, rehabilitate the roads and the sites, and have a campground. Part of that is also adding day use parking. There's a lot of day use users to that site. And so that's kind of the origin of everything. And we feel really good about it because this site was kind of in a situation where the Bureau of Land Management was offered the site. They really, they would have loved to have it, to add that to Alsea Falls, but knowing the process and the timeline that Hull Oaks was looking at, they weren't going to be able to meet that. Big federal agency moves kind of slow with some of those planning processes. And so we were looking at either accepting the site or denying it. And it would likely have been, the plan that we had heard was largely to harvest as much timber off the site as possible that would be allowable, do whatever required replant, and then sell the property for a timber holding. Um, and so that would have taken it out of any public access or anything like that. And so with acquiring this campground, we've been able to save that historic public access and hopefully provide some upgrades that make it a little nicer stay. For some folks, it won't be as nice of a stay because there were times where you could have the whole site to yourself and kind of go wherever. But we have to have it more formal with fire rings and all the different things that need to align with Oregon Department of Forestry and Oregon State Park regulations. So that is kind of the history of how we acquired it.
Okay. Well, thanks. So from there, the way I understand it, in order to formalize the campground, it required a conditional use permit application, which was submitted by Jesse and County Natural Area Parks and Events, and that application was processed and staffed by planner James Wright, who's going to walk us through the approval process for a conditional use permit specific to the McBee campground. So, James, go ahead.
Sure. First, can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. I'm not a fan of technology, so I apologize. Um, One thing to note about this, in Jesse touched on briefly, was that it was historically used as a campground, so it did have what's called a non-conforming use. Now, we could have continued that non-conforming use and change of ownership and brought it into the county standards and had the park campground exactly as it is. The conversation led to, well, let's bring this into a conforming status and follow it through with a conditional use permit being reviewed by Planning Commission. A bit of background, NAPE posted on their website in February 10th, 2025 about the McBee campground planning underway. The application was submitted. I sent out notices and I'm referencing here, in June 9th. I posted a legal ad in the Gazette Times on July 22nd. And then we had our Planning Commission hearing on August 19th. We looked at a lot of this from the general conditional use criteria, ensuring that we were staying out of the riparian zone. that any prospective campground sites would be within the previous disturbed areas and that we're not creating any more new ground disturbance areas. We're also treating it with erosion sedimentary control measures, stormwater management measures as well. The fire entities that I worked with on this is actually within their jurisdiction. It's the State Fire Marshal, Nick uh, Lanius, with the Oregon State Fire Marshal. We sent out notices 1,000 feet from the property boundary lines. And then we sent out notices to the Alsea CAC, specifically to Sarah Cash on that June 9th.
So can you walk us through, James, sort of, the general overview of the campground and the development plans, how many sites, and any improvements that needed to be made in order for it to qualify for the conditional use?
Sure. What I could start on though is the conditions of approval. I
There
think
you go.
so. Obviously, the Planning Commission approved in favor of this, subject to the following conditions of approval, and that was the Board of Commissioners to adopt a master park plan, a wildfire mitigation plan, emergency access easements, the campsites to be placed within the previously disturbed areas, an internal circular driveway access, ensuring that all the parking is outside of the emergency access routes, waste management and sanitation, a schedule of pickups for any trash or pumping of the holding tanks. We were initially hoping to have an on-site campground host. However, given its location and kind of remote setting, a seasonal check-in host is what was accepted in lieu of a permanent campground host. There was talks with working with Alsea Campground to kind of jointly work between both campground hosts, promoting educational and stewardship, having it being a seasonal operation, and then also having a series of rules for stay limits for RVs and tent sites and quiet hours. Jesse, if you want to jump in and help me out with the spots, I have a number right here that I have a possible increase of 49 tent campsites and 26 recreational sites.
Yes. So that is correct. And right now, what we're doing is kind of ground truthing that. A lot of, you kind of get a concept on a CAD drawing of where you think the site will be, and then we get out there and we find that that's a bit of a low spot or doesn't give you enough privacy from the next campsite, that kind of thing. So we've got about 70 spaces, a little over 70 spaces for the day use parking. And so so our hope is to have a camp host out there. We would love to we kind of prefer to do that. We do that with Salmonberry Campground. We like having our host out there, but this area doesn't have any utilities, water, cell phone access, any of that kind of stuff yet. So that was part of where we were a little worried about making sure that we would actually be able to get a host that would want to go to such a remote site. But we're actually finding some pretty good interest. So if you can imagine, we have setbacks from the Alsea River, minimum 25 feet, but most of them are quite a bit more than that. Kind of the way the high river mark shows for us down there. And so we've got that. We'll be doing a ton of native planning. We got in touch with Mid-Coast Watershed Council, which is our watershed council for that area, and we're going to partner on some streamside rehabilitation and plantings. It'll all be native plantings between the campsite and when you're talking about as many campsites as possible, it's kind of an interesting thing because we can't make it standard. So some of them can accept a bit of a larger RV. Some of them, based on the size, would be more for a car camping tent type site. Um, we talked about yurts and cabins, but we didn't have the funding for it, and we decided not to go that route with such a remote site. Um, so this will
We,
largely, yes.
oh, I was going to say regarding, I want to touch on those yurts as well too. We also did reach out to DLCD and get guidance from the farm and forest specialist for how to proceed forward with it with respect to like yurts and establishing. So I should back up. The code that we currently have is for private campgrounds. And so I raised the question in DLCD that if it's a publicly campground, can we follow the same proposed pathway and code section? Yes, with the exception that we had to present the master park plan to the Board of Commissioners for final adoption.
Yeah. So, few more things. When we started kind of going into talking to, initially we reached out to the rural fire district chiefs in Alsea and Monroe to kind of talk about what they would need and what approval would look like. We came to find out that McBee Campground is kind of in a little bit of a jurisdictional limbo when it came to uh, who would provide the kind of the guidance for what they wanted. And so we ended up with the state fire marshal, which required a little bit more stringent than Monroe or LC was looking for. A little bit wider turn lanes for bigger apparatus. And they had asked us to look for a alternative entry in case the main drive into McBee Campground was somehow blocked or fire control couldn't get in there. And so we got an easement from Weyerhaeuser. There's a forest road that comes out. And so all of the roads that are established there, we're continuing to use those as forestry roads for the neighbors, so that would be Nystrom Timber Holdings and Weyerhaeuser, so that they can still access their ground if they need to, even though they have other routes that they typically use, but this would be an alternative. And they were willing to grant us that easement. So we also have another entry into the backside of McBee for fire control and emergency type situations. Um, and so, kind of the goal of the campground is to maintain kind of a civilian conservation corps, old school Forest Service kind of look. There's big boulders, there's the timber, there's the waterfalls over there. And then the front, it's really the Hubert K. McBee is the name of the gentleman. He used to be one of the workers and engineer at Hull Oaks that they named it after. And it's like a big kind of robust concrete sign. So we're trying to kind of keep this aesthetic, and it's a really great campsite. There's swimming holes. That South Fork of the Alsea River is choked with salmon in the fall. And so we'll operate it seasonally. Um, and follow all the same kind of regulations that we would have with Oregon Department of Forestry for certain types of closures when they want campfires extinguished, all that kind of thing. And when we applied for the grant, we had to go through uh, Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, Oregon Department of Forestry, Oregon State Parks. State fire marshal, all those types of folks had all signed off and kind of gave their input on what they wanted to see that ended up being incorporated into our conditional use permit. Um, so I think and we've got some good stuff going on there. So some of those things like the that are required for our conditional use permit, like the management plan, some of the emergency planning type stuff. We are working with Oregon State has a course in outdoor recreation, and we've worked with them before, and they are going to we're going to get the students out there this next semester, and what is it called? OSU. I don't know the name of the class. It's kind of jumbled here, but so they're going to be helping kind of facilitate that management plan, help us do outreach, kind of figure that out. And speaking of outreach, so we started with pulling together pretty much anyone we could find that would be interested in the campground. We hosted a couple public meetings to kind of talk about, pardon me, what the past use was, how people used it, what folks would be looking for, what was missing, to kind of help us develop that. And then we produced a survey that I think was open for a couple months, that we sent out through Sustainability Coalition, county website, our Facebook page, all of those different types of things to garner some more kind of input on the development of it. And so right now we're at a stage where we are just starting to do some of the gravel work and rehabilitate some of the roadways there. Get a fresh layer of gravel on, get it compacted, get the day use parking, and then there is a couple of those giant hull oak tables, those 80-foot long deals. We have one at the fairgrounds. There's one at Avery Park. And we have one of those out there. There's actually two, but one of them had gotten damaged, burned, and kind of rotted in the middle of it. So that one might be rehabilitated, but the long one we lifted off of its foundation, and we're working with Hull Oaks to bring that thing back to life, because right now it's just been sitting out in the weather and it's kind of deteriorating. But we want to keep it on site, for one, because it's really challenging for us to move that thing out of there. And so that's a really great community asset too. There's a lot of history with those tables. So um, that's kind of where we're at right now. It's just getting the hazard trees out, clearing for access, make sure our roadways are wide enough, and coming here this winter, we'll get gravel down.
Thanks, Jesse. I really appreciate the thorough description, and thank you, James, for your input. I'm going to kick real quick to Gary Stockhoff, the Director of Public Works, just because I know there are some questions about not the internal circulation or transportation, but the jurisdiction of the road that serves the public road that serves the campground, and then after that, I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A from the Alsea folks that are on board with us here. So Gary, go ahead.
I think I can be pretty quick. South Fork, a lot of it is under the jurisdiction of Bureau of Land Management. So I think that's the controlling factor there. Part of it coming out of Alsea is ours. So I don't know what the exact concern is about the traffic or situation like that. But if there is, then I can try to address that. But South Fork is pretty much under the condition or control of BLM. I will say there's also they're getting ready to kick off a corridor kind of plan. BLM is for South Fork. They had an initial screening or meeting out in the field with Laurel Byer, our county engineer, probably 2-3 weeks ago. So not sure what that will entail, but is some other activity going in on South Fork. So with that, I'll step aside.
Okay, well, there was some questions, and might be a question for James. There was some questions that we had about, was there a transportation plan or an impact study done for this project?
No, there wasn't a required need or called out determined from Public Works for any sort of transportation analysis or anything of that nature.
Not a high enough impact to warrant a transportation plan. And then there was a comment that we had for lines on the road, and that would be under the jurisdiction of, and I'm getting some questions on the chat, so I'm kind of throwing them out there. So any lining of that roadway would be under the jurisdiction and the authority of BLM. Is that right, Gary?
Yeah, and even I think if it was ours, it's narrow enough that I'm not sure that striping a center line would be something that would happen. It
Okay.
would be the way it is because it is narrower.
And that's the same for like I've been on that road, over that road a few times. There's no lines on at all, and that would include like any kind of striping on the edges of the road as well, right?
Well, sometimes they'll stripe on the edge, but I mean, I don't know what the determination has been, but in that case, it would be up to BLM standards is what they would require to
Gotcha.
have the road striped. Yeah, if it was
Okay.
going to be striped. Again, a lot of times it's easier just to have it be unstriped so that people can, drive it accordingly. But if you have a center stripe, all of a sudden now your lanes are like 7, 8 feet, and that can create a problem too.
Okay, thanks, Gary. All right, well, then let's go to some other questions are popping up in the chat, but rather than me read them, let's just go through and let's just go through person by person that's on here. Who questions? Scotty has some questions that are coming through in the chat. You want to just go ahead and ask them?
Sure. Yeah, no, and this has to do with the road. So the road doesn't have any stripes on the edges either. So the road from the campgrounds over to Alpine is it's wider, it's better marked, doesn't feel quite as curvy and dangerous. The road from the campground down to Alsea Deadwood Highway, or just down the hill, is narrow, it's curvy, it has no lines on either side, and if you've ever driven it at night, it is really, really hard to see where you're going. And especially there, I think, is like 1/4 of a mile that does belong to Benton County, and that part of the road is horrible. It's in terms of the way it's been kept up. So it's a pretty dangerous road at night if people were driving it in RVs or campers who are not familiar with how to drive in the Coast Range. So I'm a little surprised there wasn't kind of a study because, or that we had a meeting here in Alsea, quite honestly. I know the meetings were over in the valley, but we're the ones where a lot of these people are going to be coming up the road and down the road from, because we're the route also to the coast.
Okay, Scotty,
So
thanks for the comments. Is there a question there?
the question is, can we get striping? Or do we have to go to BLM to say the road is too dangerous, we need striping, or is that part of this permitting use?
It would not be part of this permitting, but I will get in touch with our county engineer and have her check in with BLM to see what can or can't happen. So.
Okay.
Who else would have a question while we have the whole team on board here? We've got plenty of time for questions. And I do have some questions that Naomi Shadwick, who couldn't be on this line, and I've got some of her questions that I'll go through, but I want to give the folks that are on board this meeting that I'm seeing here. Zeb, I'll put you on the spot. Do you have any questions that we might be able to answer regarding the McBee campground development?
Yeah, so again, the traffic, how was it determined that there wasn't a study that needed to be made? I mean, what's the current traffic volume over that road? What's expected? I mean, it seems like there should be at least some information there.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this, and then Gary, I'm probably going to end up passing this off to you. Part of the notification process for planners is to notify the Public Works, whatever entity owns the road, and leaves that jurisdictional authority to those entities who obviously identify the traffic studies or review it. So I'm going to pass that over to Gary.
I would surmise that if this had been a brand new, never before been there campground, then there may have been some requirements to look at the traffic that it would generate. Considering it was an existing condition, and from what Jesse tells me, there's probably going to be maybe even less users, generally speaking, once the campground's all up and ready and running and all that. I would say that there wouldn't have been a requirement to have a traffic impact analysis done because it wasn't going to, in theory, generate any more than what's already there. That would be my guess. I'm not the one that handles the development requirements. That's another engineer. I can check with him, but that would be my professional opinion that it just wasn't warranted.
All right. And that was another question I had was for Jesse is when or how was the several hundred people that used that campground, when was that documented? I mean, I've lived here my whole life and I've seen some big groups up there, but I don't know if I've ever seen several hundred people up at McBee Park, at one
Yeah.
time.
No, we were shocked to find that out too. That actually came out at a community meeting and survey. So when we started kind of learning, because I think that was one of the things we were trying not to disrupt, too many groups. There was a thing called friend stock that people would go out there for, and we learned about them, didn't know about that. Various kind of bike clubs and sometimes just big parties, sometimes it's just a really big family reunion. And that was kind of one of the more challenging things for us. I think our goal was to, in this campground, there's site A, which is kind of, there's a big table, and it's kind of in the back of the campground. That provides the biggest area if you wanted to have a group camp. And so that was really important to us because we didn't want to displace everybody that was trying to do group camping. And the only other group campsite that I'm aware of is at Mary's Peak. And so we kind of knew the county was lacking in that. So that was kind of how we learned that, was that we were really cognizant of not really wanting to displace the ability to group camp. So we designed it so that some of the sites you could group together. And kind of our goal is to do, when we open it up for rentals at the beginning of the year, do a small window for group camping reservations. And then if the sites are available, you could totally rent it as a group. But then after that window, if somebody just wanted to individually pick up those sites, they could, kind of like you'd be going onto an Oregon State Parks website.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Another question that I had, would this campground be considered a commercial use from BLM? I mean, is it a free campground or is it going to cost?
We have to charge for it, yeah.
So would that make the campground a commercial use as far as BLM? Because, I mean, I know commercial use through BLM requires a permit for that road.
Yes, so
And in sometimes conditions, I don't really know.
yeah, so we have to pay them like certain road permits for if we haul gravel or timber over the top of that ground.
Okay.
And so we do that for sure. But no, we haven't heard of them adding anything to that. And we were really at the planning commission meeting. We were kind of surprised there was a gentleman sitting in the back all evening, and we didn't know who that was. And it turned out to be the area BLM manager that came down in support. And I think, his thinking was at the meeting, looking at having another campground down there, having a camp host, being able to coordinate between the two was kind of a good thing for managing Alsea Falls and McBee Campground. That there were more of us to kind of keep eyes on the place, be able to collaborate and that kind of stuff. So
this kind of my last thing is, I know the emergency preparedness, that, kind of thing is still in the works, but I really think that's going to be a big deal for, this area. I can't remember, it was 70-day use and camping was 100 or was 80 or something like that total.
yeah,
That's a lot, could be, a lot of new people to the area. RVs, especially on that road, strain on, Alsea Rural Fire Department or Monroe. I mean, you might be under the jurisdiction of state fire marshal, but that's not who's going to get called out for those emergency type calls. Just a lot of thought should go into that, I think.
Yeah, and we've had both fire chiefs out there for a visit from both protection districts, and just kind of talking about whatever they would need, where they would drop in if they need to draw out of the South Fork, and then coordinating in on, do they need a hammerhead turnaround to get their equipment out, or can they get by? And like I said, we went above and beyond what they would have required or initially required when we got with the state fire marshal. So our hope is that we have, one of the good things too is with our camp host, we give the camp host these iridium phones, so they can be in contact. And that's why we were really pushing to see if we can get someone willing to do seasons out there for us. Camp hosting can be kind of hit or miss. Sometimes we get lots of people that want to do it. Sometimes it's kind of hard to find somebody. Um, but then we've actually got an added element of somebody that can call for support that's down there immediately and has some level of authority. So we are thinking about that, and that's part of the reason we love a camp host. Just in case some kind of crazy thing happened, we had somebody that knew who to call and could get through immediately.
Okay.
We'll also have an evacuation plan that'll probably be shared between the local fire entities. That was a condition of approval as well.
Okay, I want to get on to more questions. Naomi, I'm sorry, I didn't see you on the list when I said you weren't here, but now I see there's a whole bunch of people on here that weren't listed. So Naomi Shadwick is online and she's got her hand raised and has a couple of questions. Go ahead, Naomi.
Well, my questions, a lot of the questions were partially answered. The questions I submitted were partially answered, but really not to my satisfaction. But the big thing for me, I'm always about money. And the situation is there going to be a revenue sharing between Benton County and the Alsea community as to the fact that, we're going to be, the main access to these people coming in, and they'll be paying for their overnight stays. And it would only be fair that Benton County would be sharing the revenue. And my concern is that none initially when this project started, be that as it may, as far as what you guys supposedly did with including the community in your presentations, the Gazette Times has never been adequate to get information out here to the community. We have a major number of people in the community that are not aware of what was going on here, even in the initial planning. So we felt like we were not included in the actual planning process. And I have several questions that have to do with that, that I sent to Janet and to John, and I kind of gathered some of them are being partially handled. But I'm also on the Emergency Preparedness Council, and we've been really working hard to get a comprehensive emergency preparedness disaster plan together for Alsea. And I think that this particular area would be really critical. I mean, I have relatives in Washington that are underwater now. So this is very important to me that we see that we get this the issue of flood and evacuation plan put in place so all of the community knows. But as we were talking, I got sidetracked here, but yeah, the revenue sharing is an important thing to me. I think, the bottom line is what's Alsea going to get out of this? And then as far as the camp host goes, you say that you're you're looking for people. I think really our push would be that you would check in the Alsea area first to see if there are people here that want to do this.
Yeah, happy to do that. So I could answer, I don't know much about the revenue sharing. I don't know if that's normally part of a community development block grant.
It is.
Yeah, and so this is a
It
different,
is.
yeah, this is a different thing. And so I don't know much about that, to be honest. I can't really answer that. I don't, Typically I think this would be the same as Salmonberry Campground or something like that, where um, we're able to do most of the work to get the campground set up without any tax dollars spent in the rehabilitation. Um, but yeah, I don't know about that. I would say what these are like enterprise accounts, so we have to operate them like little businesses. Try to keep,
I know all about the enterprise accounts. I'm working with the
yeah,
clinic, so I
yes,
definitely know about the enterprise accounts.
yeah. So no, I'm not aware of any kind of profit sharing.
Okay, we should be included in the conversation about that. Where would
Yes,
we go? Where would we go for that?
hmm, that I don't really know. That's kind of a unique thing for me, so I'm not sure about that.
Maybe
Um,
John, maybe you can help us, John.
I'm not familiar with any programs that require public recreational amenities to do revenue sharing with local communities. I'm not aware of that. I've not seen that.
It's not a requirement. It's an opportunity for partnerships because
Okay.
if we have received part of the revenue from that campground operation, which is going to be quite lucrative, we could use that funding to improve the betterment of the town of Alsea, which tourists are going to be coming through. So if we improve the look of the Alsea or the betterment of the Alsea town by revenue sharing, that would benefit in the long run as far as tourists coming through.
Okay, so I just want to, for the purposes
Okay.
of answering questions, your question is there an opportunity for Benton County to share revenue from the
Yes.
McBee campground with the Alsea community? I will
Yes.
find an answer to that question for you, okay?
Okay. And another question was when you were talking, Jesse, I think you were talking, the one that were talking about it, the state parks grant, was that the only source of revenue that you used to do this project?
yes.
Okay. So you didn't use any CDBG money. Okay.
Anything
That's
else,
it.
Naomi? Okay.
Nope. We just want to see the marketing plan.
Real quick, this is Ryan Van Leuven, Alsea Fire Chief.
Thank you, Ryan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was told, well, I was heard on this conference call that we were notified, the fire district was notified, and we've been out there. And I'd like to say that I am aware of was not notified, and I have not been out there to the site. And even Nick hasn't even notified me about it. So if there was an email or something set out, I'd like to see that. But as far as I know, I wasn't notified.
Oh, well, thank you, Ryan. I apologize about that. You know what? I'll have to check. I would have our project manager here tonight, but he got selected for jury duty, so he is not here. But yeah, and he
Higher
may
calling.
have mostly coordinated with Monroe Fire Protection District. I'll have to go back and kind of double check that for you.
Okay, well, I mean, it's no man's land, but we both go to the falls. So
Yeah.
I'll also get a hold of Nick and see what he's come up with
Yep.
because the state fire marshal's not going to be the one responding out there. It's actually the volunteers that's given a lot of time is going to be doing that. So I don't think you guys understand the impact that this is going to have on the fire department.
Well, yeah, that's quite an oversight. So we'll make sure to catch up with you. And there's still time to take a look at anything. But my hope is that you're quite satisfied with kind of how we have access set up and how.
Well, I don't even know. I haven't seen it. So
Yeah.
I guess I'll get a hold of Nick tomorrow and see what he's come up with, and we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep.
I think now is a good time for me to say that the staff report that James wrote for the conditional use permit application that was heard and approved by the Benton County Planning Commission is available on the county website. But I will email that staff report to Janet, who can then distribute it amongst the folks in the community that are interested. And all the details from access and fire protection and erosion control and access from the public road onto the site, those are all required to be detailed in that staff report. And I think that that is a key document that answers a lot of the questions that the community might have. And the gaps that occur in notification processing is understandable, and at the same time that the Alsea CAC was notified and there were notifications sent. If there's better ways that we can notify the communities that are impacted by land use applications, we'll definitely pursue that. But I'm comfortable, having discussed this with James, that there was we met all of the land use planning requirements for notification on this. I just want to make that clear. We didn't miss anything. If it didn't get to the right folks, we apologize for that. But we did fulfill those requirements. I just want to be clear about that. So I will send that staff report to Janet, and I'll do that tomorrow. And then Janet can forward it to anybody that would like it. I want to go to somebody that hasn't asked a question yet that's got their hand up. Sarah, I guess that's Sarah Cash. Why don't you go ahead?
Hi, I'm here and I serve on the Benton County Planning Commission and try to serve as a liaison for communication between the county, particularly the Community Development Department and the Alsea CAC, as well as the rest of the Alsea community. And Ryan has made very clear, the fire chief, that Alsea will be responding to this campground because of proximity. And I want to back him up on that and go on further to say that that fire department is basically self-sufficient. So a great place for revenue sharing, in my opinion, and I have not talked to anybody at the fire department about this, so feel free to shoot me down, Ryan. But I feel like if Alsea is going to be expected to do things like respond to emergency calls at the site, we should be part of the larger conversation. And it's a possibility that there should be a contribution made for operations that are impacted in the local community. And then that said, I heard something interesting said, which is, and I don't remember who said it. They said once the new campground is in place, it's going to reduce the usage of the campground numbers wise. Was that what that person meant to say?
Sarah, I think it could really go either way. I think, it kind of depends because when we found out that there were really, really large events out there, we wouldn't be able to do that type of thing where we could get a couple hundred people out there. And so, there are times where just 7 people out there. But then there were times where there was hundreds. And this we would be, max at about 70.
70 people or 70 sites?
70 sites, yeah.
Before, if I could just further clarify, before this application to formalize the campground was initiated, there was no control over how many people could be there at any one time. And now this is going to institute a little bit of control. That's my understanding. I'm not.
Well, you were supposed to tell the Whole Oaks, and they were supposed to tell you whether or not you could be out there. So somebody was minding the store.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they definitely would take reservations and that type of thing. And Whole Oaks did a good job for what they could do. So, yeah, it's we don't really know fully, but it could be more. It could be on average. It could be less. We're not exactly sure.
But it sounds like an understood goal of the planning that you did is to reduce the usage by the larger groups.
Yeah, kind of the uncontrolled usage. That was kind of one of the bigger things we were worried about was parking. Some of the degradation to the shoreline, parking on tree roots, and just kind of nestling in wherever you could find a space.
Okay, Naomi had her hand raised again. Is Naomi, do you have any other questions?
I just wanted a clarification on it as far as I communications to the community and the timing of the communications about this. James said that the first communications to us to Alsea was or out there period was February 10th of 2025. Well, you guys began the planning probably in the beginning, either the end of 23 or in 24. So why wasn't Alsea notified or invited at that point?
I'm
You know,
gonna
we
just.
didn't.
Oh, sorry, Jesse.
James, go ahead. Sorry.
NAPE posted on their website the Herbert
Explain
McGee
what, James, I'm
planning,
sorry. Let me interrupt you. What is NAPE?
natural areas, parks, and events.
Okay.
Posted on their website the Herbert McGee campground planning underway on February 10th, 2025. Just one of those additional outreaches. The notices was sent out, legal ad was posted. I heard your comment about the Gazette Times. And so one thing I do want to ask is that making sure that we have the updated preferred emailing list for everyone in Alsea CACs or in Alsea, all interested parties, ensuring that we have that updated list. And that way, if there's any land use applications that take place within there, we'll have the most updated list as possible.
You've
Well,
had
I
you've
don't want
had
to.
a, you've had an updated list for a couple of years now. So
Let me go
that's
through the list because I have Gary Storm, which note
strong.
in Strom, which says the email does not work. I have Mimi Stout, which
Would you like us to send it again to the community development department? Would that be helpful to you?
I think
yes,
that's the
and that's what
best
I'm
thing to
that's what
do.
I'm asking for. That would
Okay,
be ideal.
gotcha.
I just want to interject here again. When you guys began, when Whole Oaks came to you or came to the Alliance people and you worked with the Alliance people, that had to be in 24. Why was not Alsea invited during that pre-planning process or until February of 2025?
It's probably an oversight. To be honest, weren't super familiar with this group, and I think a lot of it we were kind of reaching out, hoping that the Facebook, the emails, the public notices would kind of drive the group, and so if we had to do it all over again, we would have started with y'all. But being in NAPE, not very often in interacting with the group. Not even really all that aware that the group existed. I've worked with ACE before, but that was years ago. So yeah,
ACE is not the representative of Alsea for community development. It has not been for many years. I can say that because I was on the board since
Never
2000.
was.
So it's not just a matter of the agency or the group. Alsea community as a whole was not aware of what was going on when you started the planning process. And that's what we want, is to be included in the planning process.
yeah. Well,
Okay.
yeah, we would have loved to have you as part of it, but sometimes there's a lot of groups out there that we're going to end up missing, and some will hit the mark. So
Can I just ask a question?
Oh,
So I know you guys had meetings over in the valley, but since we're in Alsea, so we're the other side of the falls. There was never a scheduled meeting here in Alsea, so it would have just been for the community, not necessarily CAC, correct?
yes, yeah, yes.
Was there a reason why Alsea wasn't included as a meetings place for this project?
No, not any specific reason. I think a lot of the interest was originally coming kind of more from Highway 99. I'm talking Monroe, Alpine, and Bell Fountain. Um, so trying to kind of capture, and we were getting a lot of the people that were kind of associated or know Hull Oaks that were former campers there. So I think that kind of drove that.
Okay, folks, we're coming up on time here, and I got to be respectful to staff members that got to get to Planning Commission. So, I don't see any other hands raised, but that's okay. Are there any other questions? And like I said, if you ask a question and we don't have the answer, we will certainly uh, follow back on that. So I see Naomi, you have one more question?
Yes, I was just wondering, what level of interaction does Benton County Sheriff, is he involved in this process?
Who?
The sheriff, because we don't currently have adequate coverage out here with this increase in the population. Has he been consulted about how they would handle it? Safety and security, crime, etc.
James, is there a requirement in the conditional use process to notify law enforcement of development like this?
No. Of recollection, no, I don't believe there is, because that's something that can't be easily identified and tied to an actual specific land use. For example, like any partition crime can happen. So it's hard to preemptively design a site crime free, if that makes sense. Um,
I was just looking for his communication. Did you ask him for any kind of input as far as his observations?
no, it was never part of the actual noticing pathway. I also noticed Mitzi's hand at one point, so I just wanted to see, Mitzi, did you have a question?
Hey, thank you so much, James. No, I had it up for Scotty because I wasn't sure if she knew how to raise her hand, and I looked like she was asking. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're at 5 o'clock, folks. I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion, and we can certainly continue discussion at our next scheduled Alsea CAC meeting, which will be in January. And we're always looking for ways to improve our outreach and communications with our communities. So I was glad that Commissioner Shepard was able to attend our last meeting. You put this issue to him, that there was interest and concerns that you didn't have your questions answered about this development. And I hope we were at least able to start that conversation today. So I appreciate this very much. And Janet, I'll kick it back to you to close the meeting unless there's anything else, any more questions that anybody that's participating here might have. Okay,
Well,
hearing
I
none, I'm going to go ahead and kick it to Janet.
okay. Well,
I do
I
have a
want to. Oh, go ahead, Sarah. I guess if it's
I just
okay.
make one statement. It's not a question. I appreciate your concern about meeting the requirements for notification and engagement. But I think on the other side of the fence, it's more about whether the county makes the effort to engage with our community, no matter what the regulations might be. All right, I'm done.
Noted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one statement also, and that would just be, should this become a money maker, which I hope it does. I hope that uh, funds can go into road improvement on the Alsea side for accessing, and perhaps law enforcement. And with that, I guess I shall adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Thanks, folks. Like I said, you can always reach me by email, or I will see you next month at the library for our regular scheduled meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.